A few years ago, when I was in my last year at seminary, our class was to create a memorial service for someone. And the memorial service was to start at 11 o'clock that morning. And of course, we were all coming in from different parts of the country and had only arrived the day before. And that morning, then, when we got to the church and we were going to be creating and putting together this ceremony, the first thing that we all wanted to do was get moving, get going, get things done. And our instructor stopped us and she said, "Sit, take a breath." And then she led us into a time of quiet. It seemed like that time of quiet lasted forever. But what happened was, when we came out of it, we were more centered. We were more connected with each other and more focused on what needed to be done. That story is something that I was reminded of when I was preparing this talk today. The talk about Mary and Martha. What I think of as a tale of two sisters. Have you ever felt as if you've been pulled in different directions with too much to do? And do you find at times that there are things that you leave out so that you can do things that need to be done that seem to be immediate? But sometimes the things that you leave out are the things that really matter. Do you ever struggle to balance downtime, time to just be, with the obligations of life, with so much to do? Well, the story of Mary and Martha gives us insight into how to recognize that feeling, as well as what to do about it when we are feeling this urgency to get things done. And the message of the story is really that whatever we choose to do, that we do it with some intention and that we do it with a level of calm and enjoyment. Mary and Martha were Lazarus's sisters. And other than the disciples who Jesus mentored, we only really hear about stories involving Jesus's friends, Mary, Martha, and Lazarus. They were like the best friends. They all loved each other and socialized together. I think of Jesus, needing to take a break from ministry occasionally, and he would go to Mary's house and Martha's house and the house of Lazarus. And that was where it was like he could relax and just be. We see this story told in chapter 10 of Luke, beginning at the 38th verse. And the story goes like this. Now, as they went on their way, he entered a certain village where a woman named Martha welcomed him into her home. She had a sister named Mary who sat at the Lord's feet and listened to what he was saying. But Martha was distracted by her many tasks. So she came to him and asked, "Lord, do you not care that my sister has left me to do all the work by myself? Tell her then to help me." But the Lord answered her, "Martha, Martha, you are worried and distracted by many things. There is need of only one thing. Mary has chosen the better part, which will not be taken away from her. And that is the end of the story as it is written in Luke. So we've got Martha welcoming Jesus into her home. And then, like any good hostess, she gets busy. I can imagine her making the tea, getting the snacks together, making sure that everyone has food and everyone has something to drink and everyone is being taken care of. And while she's busy doing all of these things, her sister Mary is doing nothing, taking time out to sit at Jesus's feet and listen to the wisdom of the master teacher. I can imagine Martha feeling that she's the responsible one. It's her house, after all. Feeling overworked, underappreciated, feeling resentment that Mary isn't helping her with these duties. On the other hand, Mary is quite peaceful in her decision to take a time out and sit at Jesus's feet. She's decided that it's more important to be present with him than it is to be busy and even to take care of the people around who are visiting. And it's pretty clear that Martha doesn't think that Mary is being fair or that she's being considerate. And what's really interesting is in her agitation, Martha doesn't go to her sister Mary and complain. She goes to Jesus. And Jesus, instead of responding in the way that Martha hopes, Jesus observes that Martha is worried and distracted. And he basically tells her that Mary's choosing a better way. And we see this contrast between the two sisters. Martha, worried, distracted. Mary, peaceful, calm, open, and still. We see Martha's tension. We can almost feel it in the wording of the story. And it's somewhat surprising that Jesus' response is so clear that it is wiser to choose Mary's way. And maybe it isn't so surprising because Mary's way is calmer. It's more centered. It's actually more present. What does this mean for us? Well, as you know, the stories and events in the Bible can be interesting just as stories. They can also be used as illustrations and lessons about how to live more fully and peacefully and joyfully. And to find these other meanings, we look at the characters and the places and events in different ways to see how we can see ourselves in the story, to see how the events that unfold in the story could be representations of events in our lives and in our world. And we can sometimes look at the stories and see how the people and places and events are actually stories within us that happen inside of us too. And so today, I explore a couple of these aspects of interpretation and a couple of ideas about interpretation of the story. And what really seems to come clear to me as I contemplated this story is that there are two parts. One is to choose the things that matter to you, and the other is to do whatever that is and approach it with joy, whatever you choose to do. Let's look at the story just at face value. I'm guessing that most of us can think of a Mary or a Martha or two in our lives. It appears that Mary is being selfish or inconsiderate as she leaves her sister to tend to the guest. I know I was taught growing up that hospitality is important, that the guests should be fed and tended to. So doesn't Martha have a point? I mean, imagine what would have happened if Martha also sat down with Mary at Jesus's feet. And what if nobody took care of the hospitality? What if nobody thought about what might be provided for food and for drinks and perhaps for places to sleep? There'd be some hungry people out there. It's not that what Martha did didn't matter. It was important work that she was doing. Taking care of guests is something that is important too. As I was reading this, I found myself laughing because I can identify, and those who know me will know that I can identify with the busyness of Martha. I am always on the go. But I didn't identify as much with the resentment that Martha felt. And I think this is a key idea to notice. Martha feels resentful, anxious, overworked perhaps. Mary feels quite at peace. Jesus notes that Martha is worried and distracted by many things. It's as if she's doing more than is actually necessary. And then on top of that, she's resentful about what she is doing or what Mary isn't doing. And there's a sense a little bit of being a victim at the same time. And what I know is that some people would thrive on the idea of preparing for guests. They would thrive on the idea of feeding guests, of providing for guests. And yet Martha was kind of resentful. And I don't know, and it's hard to know, if it's because she didn't have Mary's help, or if she wanted to be with Mary and also sit at the feet of Jesus, or whether it was something else. We don't know. But I wonder if part of her resentment is because she expected something different from Mary, her sister. And what would have happened if Martha had no reference for what she perceived Mary's role should be? If she had no expectation of Mary, would she then have been more happy to take care of her guests? Where do we do something and then expect others to contribute in a similar way? Where are we like Martha, doing something, serving in some way, and then expecting others to also do the same? It could be in our families, in our workplaces, in our friendships. Do we expect others to work just because we do, to serve just because we serve? What if we didn't mind? What if we contributed, worked, served, because it's what we want to do, because it's what we want to do, with no concern about what other people choose to do? So that is one question that we can ask ourselves. Are we giving freely? joyfully, choosing to do what we are doing and coming from that place of giving joyfully. As soon as we are expecting someone else to do the same, we are paving the way for resentment. So let us just choose to do what we want to do and do it joyfully. And then, are we doing too much? Is there a way that we can make our lives simpler and easier? Is there a place where we add too much expectation of ourselves, which prevents us from being present to the people in our lives? What would happen if the dishes didn't get done right after supper? What if you could just relax and enjoy being with the people that matter? That is another aspect of the story that we might consider. And this brings us to another way of looking at the story, and that is that Jesus in the story can represent the things that matter to us, the relationships which are important to us, the things that are important to us, that endure for us, the things that may not always be with us, the people that may not always be with us. In this type of interpretation, Martha can represent our doingness, all that busy stuff, both necessary and unnecessary, that can distract us from giving attention to the things that matter. And then it can also lead us to feeling flustered and resentful because we can't get to that place of quiet. Mary can represent our beingness, the willingness to be okay with setting the busyness aside so that we can give attention to the important parts of our life, including our own self-development and our rest, our self-restoration. We see this as an example all the time with something that I grew up with or internalized. I'm not even sure if it's part of my family. I don't think so. It's just something I picked up and internalized. And that is the idea that work must be done before rest can be enjoyed. I can imagine Martha driven to finish the work first, and then they'll take time to sit with Jesus. It's the idea of, I'll do this and then. When this is done, then. And what we know is that there's always more work to be done. There's always something that will be on our to-do list. And so the idea of catching up before we rest, it's a false goal. We will never catch up. There will always be something to do. And what Mary's example tells us, supported by Jesus, is that it is okay to take time to rest, to take time to renew, to not be on task all the time. And oh my goodness, I'm hearing myself speak these words, and there's a part of me that resists it. It doesn't mean that we're going to ignore obligations, but rather that we give ourselves permission to take time out, to focus on our own development, to spend time with our friends and our families and our spouses and our children. We want to find that balance between our doingness, represented by Martha, and our beingness represented by Mary. And think of the consequences of being so focused on the stuff that should be done that we defer the important aspects of our lives, where we delay the important aspects of our lives. The phrase that keeps repeating in my mind is missed opportunity. Missed opportunity, characterized by the words, if only, and I wish I'd. And an example that I can think of is a parent who is so focused on providing for their family that they work all the time and they miss their child's first steps or their child's graduation or being there at meal times, or they're not there for their spouses. When we have so much going on, some of it necessary, some of it unnecessary, that we aren't present to the things that matter. And then when it is too late, we wish that we had spent more time with our family and friends, more time attending to things that matter. And one of the songs that came to mind as I was thinking about this was the song Cats in the Cradle by Harry Chapin. Perhaps one of the saddest and truest songs that I've ever heard. I'll just share some of it with you. The lyrics go, "My child arrived just the other day. He came to the world in the usual way, but there were planes to catch and bills to pay. He learned to walk while I was away, and he was talking 'fore I knew it. And as he grew, he'd say, 'I'm going to be like you, Dad. You know, I'm going to be like you.' And the cat's in the cradle and the silver spoon, little boy blue and the man in the moon. When you coming home, Dad? I don't know when, but we'll get together then. You know, we'll have a good time then." Missed opportunities. Consider how important that task is. Instead, don't wait. Don't miss the opportunity to do the important things, including spending time with the people who matter to you, including spending time doing nothing. Give yourself permission to be Mary. Don't wait. Don't miss your opportunities. Choose the things that matter. And then when you do choose, whatever you choose, whether it's to sit in Mary style and be at the feet of Jesus, or whether it is to be more like Martha and on the go, choose to do it joyfully, peacefully, without expectation. Notice that this would not even have been a story if Martha hadn't complained to Jesus. If she was completely at peace with her choice to take care of her guests, then she would also have been at peace with Mary's choice to sit at Jesus's feet. And I think in this way, we can look at it as another aspect of the Mary and Martha story, and that is as different energies. There's an energy of Mary. She is peaceful open, exactly where she wants to be. And then the energy of Martha in this story, overwhelmed, feeling resentful, irritated, anxious. And I think that it doesn't matter how busy we are. We can be extremely busy, productive, and active, and we can still have the energy of Mary. So another way of looking at this story is to begin like Mary, to choose to have the energy of Mary, no matter what we do. That way we can choose the things that matter to us and approach them with joy. And this is kind of a form of metaphysical interpretation. And a quick way to understand metaphysical interpretation is to add the words "in me" to the characters and places and events in a story. In this way of looking at the story, Jesus in us is the place of quiet, of calm, of peace, a place of wholeness and contentment. It is the place where all parts of us are integrated, accepted, are harmonious, the kingdom of God. Mary in us is that place within us where we can be still, where we are connected with our values, where we know what feeds us and fills us. It is sometimes thought of as living from our heart space, where we are free to choose what we want to do and we can be present to what matters to us. Mary's energy is our being nature, peaceful, open, calm. In contrast, we have Martha, our mind, our thoughts, that part of us that never stops thinking, that often judges and compares, that can worry and be distracted, that can believe that stillness equals laziness, that part of us that needs to be busy. And it, Martha, can represent our doing nature. And remember that Jesus, Martha, Mary are all aspects of us. All of these characters live within us. It's just a matter of what we begin with. What do we focus on? When we allow ourselves to be irritable and restless and resentful of the time that we take to be still, when our Martha is judging our Mary, then that's when we can see Martha is at work. Often we see that our desire to be still, to be relaxed, to take time out to play and meditate and learn can be distracted by Martha. Our Mary, our heart, can be distracted by our mind. And yet Jesus, the wisdom in us, says that Mary has the better way. We want a healthy relationship between our doing and our being. Mary and Martha, sisters. If Mary has the better way, then that means that whatever we choose to do, we want to start with stillness, with calm, even when we have plenty to do. And so Let's think about our Mary and Martha and the relationship between the two. Let's consider putting people before things, especially the important people before less important people to us. Let us put ourselves in that important list and take care of ourselves. Let's ask ourselves whether what we are doing really is important. Let's ask ourselves if we can accept that there will always be more to do and allow ourselves to rest anyway. These are some of the lessons from Mary and Martha. As we go about our day, as we go about our life, let us recognize that there is always something to do. Let's discern whether or not some of it needs to be done. But let us also recognize that whatever we choose to do, that we want to start by connecting with the Mary part of us first. Connect with your heart first. Connect with the peaceful part of you first. Just as we did at that memorial service when I was at school, rather than go straight into the busyness, take time to be still. There is an old Zen proverb that says, you should sit in meditation for 20 minutes every day, unless you're too busy. Then you should sit for an hour. When you find yourself feeling resentful, take time to be still and, like Mary, connect with the divinity within you. When you find yourself overwhelmed, take time to be still and connect with the divinity within you. When you have a choice between the important and the really important, choose the really important. When you make the choice to be in busy doing mode, again, take time to be still. Start with the energy of Mary. Then go and do what you choose to do. Choose the things that matter and approach all of them with joy. I bless you.